Ronald Chapman is a federal defense attorney and legal analyst. He joins us tonight from Detroit for some legal perspective. Ronald, thanks so much for your time this weekend. To start off, as a defense attorney, what do you see as the former president's defense here if this does end up going to trial?
That's a very difficult question because, as you can see in the indictment, the evidence, if it's proven in court, appears to be pretty damning. We've heard the Trump camp suggest that he had the ability to declassify, but of course we also have this conversation where he admits that he did not declassify. So I think his main defense in this case is probably going to be one of mindset. He may try to argue that he didn't knowingly possess this classified information. That is going to be a very difficult defense strategy, given that the prosecution claims to have actual recordings and witness statements where he admits that the information was classified. I don't think the declassification defense is going to work for Donald Trump in this case. And honestly, given the information that they have against him, I would expect him to try to resolve this short of a trial.
And something the New York Times asked in a new article is simply why, writing in part, quote, Mr. Trump's motive for having thousands of presidential records, including more than 300 classified documents at Mar-a-Lago, was not addressed directly in the 49-page indictment. The charging document did not establish that Mr. Trump had a broader goal beyond simply possessing the material. While finding a motive could certainly be useful for prosecutors should Mr. Trump end up at trial, it may not be necessary in proving the legal elements of the case against him. If this does end up at trial, how much does motive matter? If it doesn't end up at trial, does it matter? If the evidence, as you know, it really lists off in the indictment, is pretty overwhelming.
Motive is incredibly important here for the prosecution. If we look at the case of Chelsea Manning, I think 35-year sentence in federal prison, although it was pardoned or commuted later on, that was the sentence that was given. That's what you get when you engage in something closer to espionage. There's other examples in federal law where people have received extraordinary sentences for espionage. Here, it appears that Trump possessed the documents simply for personal clout, bragging to friends, the knowledge that he had it and had these government secrets, maybe keepsakes from his time in office. That certainly is a mitigating factor in this case. It suggests that there was no attempt to spill this information to foreign governments, which would make his case much more severe and more akin to a Chelsea Manning case. When it's just simply possession, we see the sentences get lower. I think somebody in Hawaii got only 3 months in 2022. There was another case in 2021 where somebody received 30 months in prison.
And we heard from special counsel Jack Smith yesterday. Let's listen to one part of his brief remarks, and we'll have a question for you on the other side.
It's very important for me to note that the defendants in this case must be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. To that end, my office will seek a speedy trial in this matter, consistent with the public interest and the rights of the accused.
Now, Trump is not just the former president. He's the leading Republican candidate for his party's nomination in 2024. Jack Smith said speedy trial. What could that time frame look like?
Well, typically I tell my clients that a trial could be as quick as 70 days. Of course, that doesn't generally happen, but more likely it will take around 18 months to resolve. That's just been about the average. Now, a trial can take a lot longer. A case can take a lot longer to get to trial when we have things like motions to dismiss being filed, discovery disputes being filed, and issues that a judge needs to decide. This case, it's going to be on the longer side. I doubt that it will be resolved by the election. One other thing I'd like to point out, and I don't know if this was just a slip of the tongue or not, but special counsel, when speaking to the media there, said defendants. Now, we have Trump on this indictment, but we also have a conspiracy charge. That does suggest to me there's a possibility that other people could later be brought in this case, or there are already sealed filings against other people involved.
That's an interesting point there. We will certainly be waiting for more details as all of this continues to unfold pretty rapidly. To move forward, can you explain why the Trump case is different than the ones involving President Biden and former Vice President Mike Pence? Pence recently learned he would not face any charges. We didn't think he would face any charges, and they have said he will not. But it may be easy for someone who's not closely following all of this to just assume, all classified document cases are kind of similar. Will you differentiate them for us?
Yeah, and I think the phrase here that we need to cling to is crime fraud. So there's allegations in the indictment that Trump conspired with his attorneys in this case to conceal records from the National Archives and ultimately from the federal government. There's charges related to false statements. There's a host of them at the beginning in the early charges of the indictment, or the early allegations in the indictment. Those are the counts that separate this case from simple inadvertent possession of classified information. Now, in this country, we have a classified information problem. We have a lot of people who are inappropriately holding classified information, and the Department of Defense and just about every other federal agency recognizes that fact. Mistakes will happen. That's much similar to the Pence and Biden issue there, where charges don't necessarily occur. The difference is when you knowingly possess that information, and then a further difference when you knowingly conceal that information and try to keep it. And that's why Trump is indicted and other people are not.
And the next step for the former president will be his arraignment hearing Tuesday in Miami. Federal defense attorney Ronald Chapman, thanks as always for your time and insight.
Thank you.